I call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Public Works this Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. First on our agenda, we have messages from board members. Do we have any messages from the board this evening? Next up, we have petitions and remonstrances. First, I'll just ask for any public comment on anything that is not on our agenda this evening. If anyone is here to make a public comment on something that is not on the agenda, now is an opportunity to do so. As Adam mentioned, you could use the raised hand function. You could also type in the chat if you're joining us on Zoom. If you're here in the room, you're welcome to approach the podium or otherwise signal that you have a public comment.
The public on the Zoom meeting like to offer any general public comment for anything not on the agenda? I think those are all folks that are here for,
For items, okay, great, thank you. So seeing none on the general comments, first up, we have appeal notice of violation number 51009 and 51132 for excessive growth at 1217 West 6th Street.
Hi, good evening. Daniel Dixon, City of Bloomington Legal Department. This is an appeal of two notices of violation that were issued for overgrowth under Title VI of the Bloomington Municipal Code, specifically for yellow groove bamboo. To give some context, we've actually we originally started discussing this, I believe, probably about a month or so ago when this first appeared on the agenda. And was continued for a couple of times to address some questions and concerns that the board had during a work session related to enforcement with regard to bamboo. Over the past several weeks, we've had many meetings internally with staff and incorporating some input from our various departments who are experts in landscaping and plant species, and have developed sort of a process that the city will be, and the hand department will be moving forward with in terms of enforcement of bamboo. Bamboo was added to the Title 20 list of prohibited species either at the end of 2019, but I think sort of formally and officially at the beginning of 2020 through an update to Title 20, also known as the UDO. That for the first time made it impermissible to have yellow groove bamboo growing on one's property and to continue to maintain that. Because of that update, hand staff and our neighborhood compliance officers who are responsible for enforcing Title VI have been on a complaint basis at this point responding to complaints related to bamboo. In this particular case, began issuing notices of violation, I believe, at the mid to end of 2021, and then carrying on through as well the beginning of this year. Many of those were no fines or warnings, and the most recent ones have been beginning to accrue fines, which is part of the appeal that's in front of you tonight. Going back to the discussion that we've been having internally and sort of identifying a process, hand staff has recognized that bamboo, yellow groove bamboo in particular, poses a very unique enforcement challenge, but also a pretty unique remediation challenge as well because of its incredibly fast propagation, its ability to run great distances underground, pop up in other places, and just how difficult it is and how much time, sometimes 4 or 5 or more years it can take before it is effectively and completely removed. In viewing all of these things together, hand staff and our neighborhood compliance officers are going to be doing a bit of a different process when it comes to enforcement of bamboo. The first piece of this is going to be sort of a joint, what we'll look at as sort of an educational piece. When this was added to the UDO in 2020, it probably was not made so commonly known. I believe this was Amendment 50. That was made to the UDO. There was a lot of things going on at that time with that UDO update, and I don't think it was well known at the point that that was added to that list and that it wasn't an appropriate thing for people to maintain in their yards. So one piece of this is going to be utilizing the neighborhood outreach connections and other connections that the hand department has to provide some information and connections to already existing resources to improve people's awareness of not just the yellow groove bamboo, but other invasive species that were added to that list on the UDO. And with regard to yellow groove in particular, some resources such as MC Iris, our local invasive species group, that can help responsibly remove this. So apart from the education piece, we are also going to be changing the way that we do enforcement with regard to fines. The first interaction will be essentially a warning or a $0 fine, notice of violation, and that is to sort of continue the education piece to let the property owner know that this is now an unacceptable noxious plant that they're not supposed to have in their yard, and to give them an opportunity of about 90 days to connect with the resources that will be provided and to develop a plan for remediation and ultimately removal. And the reason for this is that, as I mentioned before, it's a very difficult thing to remove, and you have to do it responsibly because not only will it come back in the place where you hacked it down, but if you don't dispose of the shoots themselves responsibly, they can propagate and grow again wherever you've disposed of them, thus sort of amplifying the problem in another location. And so it needs to be done thoughtfully and deliberatively. And so after that 90-day period, we'll be looking at is there a plan in place and a process to start this removal? And then continued enforcement will just be monitoring to make sure that as time goes on, the footprint is being reduced, that it is being controlled and cut back, and that it is eventually being eliminated and removed. And if all those things are going well, then that will be considered compliance with regard to Title VI. Leading back into how that relates to the appeal tonight, given this change and sort of this policy that we think we're going to move forward with that provides a good balance of education and fairness, we would be agreeable to maintaining the notices of violation, so leaving the notices of violation in place because it is a violation of Title VI in our existing code, but removing the fine from the notices of violation so that there is no fine owed for these violations. The idea being that we would hope that the appellant would take the money not being paid to the city for this to begin the process of remediating and starting to control and remove and pull back that bamboo and replacing it with something that will provide her with the privacy buffer that she wants, but that's also an acceptable and native plant that has better local characteristics for our community. Ultimately, the last part of this process is that if an individual does either refuse or does not want to remove the bamboo, hand compliance officers and hand staff, we don't have discretion to not enforce the law. And so if we receive complaints and there's a violation and there's a refusal to comply with that, we need to follow what the municipal code requires us to do, which in this case would then ultimately be to move towards an abatement, where we would be coming back to the Board of Public Works, seeking approval for hand and its contractor to go onto a property to have this removed. And this kind of abatement would be, again, unique because it would be a continual process that would probably, again, take multiple years to complete. But ultimately, then, again, would be the responsibility of the property owner because under Title VI, any of the expense that hand incurs in abatement gets recorded as an assessment against the taxes on the property. So that's a very long-winded explanation of kind of how we decided to tackle this issue of bamboo and what we would ask the board to do tonight with regard to the notices of violation. I do understand that our appellant, I think, is here, and so we'll defer to her to make any additional statements. I know that this update to this process is something that she's probably not aware of, so may merit some discussion as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions now, or if you'd like to hear from our appellant first, I'm happy to defer.
Would the appellant like to make comments at the microphone?
My hearing's not great.
Okay.
hip replacement.
Oh, if you could just state your name into the microphone.
Karen Charrington.
Okay, and if you can move the microphone down just a little bit, it might help. Yeah, there, perfect. Thank you.
Karen Charrington.
Thank you.
I live next door to 1217 West 6th Street. Did you read my letter, or did you look at any of the photos?
We did.
The bamboo's been there 30 years. I know how to maintain it. It hasn't come into my yard, and I live right next door. In the spring, you knock it down, and then you put plastic on it. But anyway, I'm maintaining it. I'm doing the best I can. I hire people every year to knock it down. I don't want it all over. I just want it on the edges, and so I do clear it out in the middle. I do the best I can. Any questions?
Just for clarification, do you own the lot that the bamboo is
Yes.
growing on, and then you reside in the neighboring lot?
Yes,
Is that correct?
I live right next
Okay.
door. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And I own them, yeah. I own both houses. I own several houses on the near west side.
Okay.
I love it there.
So if I could just ask a question then to the appellant here. Do you have plans to remove the bamboo, or is it your intent just to leave the bamboo and try to manage it on the edge of the property? 'Cause-
I would really like to be able to,
Okay.
to manage it, because if you read my letter, it's because of the privacy and the protection.
Okay.
I
We
mean, I
will-
would really, but and like I said, in 30 years, it has never gone anyplace. It doesn't go past the alleys. As long as people use those alleys, and they do use those alleys, it doesn't go anywhere.
And Daniel, please help me here, but so with the action of having the yellow bamboo added to the prohibited species list by the city council some years ago, it's not this board's purview to be able to allow you to keep the yellow bamboo. It's whether or not you're actually going to make the attempt to abate it and have it removed and keep it from growing. What staff is proposing is that you would have a 90-day period to begin that effort and to show significant progress. Otherwise, the notices of violation would stand, the fines would stand. Is that a pretty accurate description of what's been discussed, Daniel? Yeah, please go ahead.
In general terms, yes. Because the addition of the yellow groove bamboo was done by the city council, it's a legislative action that basically made that a prohibited species. It's not something that the Board of Public Works did. Really, tonight is a question about just enforcement of the fine and upholding the notice of violation. I think if the board follows sort of what I was proposing to do as far as maintaining the notices of violation, but eliminating the fines, those fines wouldn't ultimately come back. If we were in a situation where it was an abatement, we would just be requesting an abatement at that time and not necessarily assessing any new fines.
Is that clear to you?
I'm reading it because I can't hear very well. Not really.
Okay. So what's being proposed is that you would have the 90-day period to get the bamboo removed and show significant progress.
It won't go away in 90 days.
We're asking that you show the significant progress in order to continue that. Again, the board's purview is that they can't waive the city council's ruling that yellow bamboo has been added. That is no longer allowed, hasn't been since the code was updated. So what's being proposed is that you be allowed time to remediate and show significant progress.
Well, I have, did you look at my photos? I have put a bunch of plastic down, and I had it all cut back.
Yep.
I mean,
The removal, in the end, the removal is what needs to happen.
I don't know how to remove it except to excavate and dig up, which thousands of dollars to do
That's quite
that.
possible, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but that is what the expectation would be.
And I do want to clarify, that total excavation would not be, we would not be expecting something like that within the 90 days. What we were proposing would be that within the 90 days, there would just be some kind of plan in place to begin that process. And we recognize that the removal of that bamboo is an expensive and a time-consuming process that could take ultimately years or more before it's complete. And so what
Yeah.
really we would be monitoring for in enforcement would just be to see as time goes on that it's being reduced in its footprint, that it's being maintained and then ultimately moved towards removal and replacement with something new. So if you found another species that was acceptable under the state and city law for approved species, that provided that privacy buffer for you as well, to try to work that in as you work the bamboo out. Over time, that would still be an acceptable thing as long as that bamboo is being phased out over time. So it's not something, I don't want to say that that's something we're saying, it's just got to be out in 90 days. The idea being that the first 90 days would be to just come up with a process for how you're going to do it.
Well, I've already worked on it in the last few weeks.
And then the other piece too, as well as we've had some internal meetings and as well as I think can identify, and the goal being connecting people with resources such as MC Iris, which is our local Monroe County invasive species removal group, has a lot of resources and information available to help people learn how to manage this and remove it, to try to make those resources and information available to people as well as part of this process. So yeah, within 90 days is really primarily just a plan to get it done. And then after that 90 days is where we'd like to start seeing some progress towards the ultimate goal of having it removed. Obviously, you have a lot of it, and it's going to take a long time.
And there's not such a thing as grandfathering it. I mean, I didn't put it there. It was just there. And then I have to ask, what about, there's bamboo stands all over this city, all over this city.
Yep.
Am I the only one that has to?
No, so they're, hand staff, it's based on, it's a complaint basis, and as part of their routine inspections, they're in neighborhoods for regular inspections of all of the aspects in which they're charged with enforcing. There have been specific complaints about this bamboo from neighbors.
What were the complaints?
The complaints came into staff from neighboring properties that this bamboo was present and that it was spreading.
That's not.
Well,
Okay.
that's the complaint that came in. And so at this point in time, as Daniel said, what we're looking to do is give you a 90-day period to come up with a plan of ultimately removing the bamboo.
And so then you're telling me that maybe there's some city resources that
There are
can
some
help?
nonprofit resources. There's a
Pardon?
nonprofit group that works on invasive species removal called MC Iris that we would help get you in touch with as well. But no, not direct city resources financially.
There's no funding for this kind of,
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I don't have.
Well, so again, what we're asking the board to do is uphold the notices of violation. The fines won't be due at this time, and you'll have the 90-day period to begin working with staff to come up with that plan.
So I'm supposed to contact,
The hand staff will be in touch with you, yes.
and then somebody's going to come inspect every,
They'll be in pretty regular communication with you to see what progress is being made, yes. Yes,
Just a
please.
clarification, please. One is, can we provide Ms. Charrington with a particular contact name of someone, maybe within hand, if that's most appropriate, so that there is a particular person that she can connect with instead of just kind of a vague department? I think maybe that would be helpful.
Yep.
And two, I just want to confirm that this 90-day window would start now and not with the timing of the first NOV,
Correct.
correct? So 90 days, so we're essentially starting this 3-month window now to work on a plan for moving forward. Correct? Okay, thank you.
And we do. We have John Hewitt would be your contact in hand. We can get you in touch with John. He's here this evening. And again, it's to come up with that plan for future removal.
well, okay, the only removal there is, like I said, is it has to be dug up and excavated, and that's thousands of dollars. That's why I asked if the city had some sort of program where you could borrow the money or something, you know? If
Not-
the invasive species are, you know, there isn't, so.
No.
Well, there should be.
Okay. But we can put you in touch with Mr. Hewitt and staff, and they'll continue to communicate with you on this one.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Sorry.
I just really like the bamboo. The birds love it. It gives off more oxygen than oak trees. It really does. And it doesn't invade any place.
It's considered highly invasive.
I know it is, but like I said, it's been there 30 years. It has not jumped anywhere. I live there. If you maintain it, which I know how to do, then it's an asset.
This was a decision of the city council to add this. We can definitely put you in touch with their representatives as well.
Okay.
This is more of an appeal to the board, which they
Okay.
don't oversee the creation of the rules. It's
I've never
more of
done this
the
before.
enforcement. Yep, it's okay.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Am I done?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for
Thank you.
your comments. We appreciate you being here. All right, any remaining questions from the board on this item? And just to recap, it sounds like the staff suggestion is that we consider upholding the notice of violation, waiving the fines attached to the notice of violation so that the property owner and Hand can work collaboratively on the plan. Do we have a motion on this item?
That we uphold the notice of violation 51009 and 51132, yet remove the fines, the monetary fines for excessive growth at 1217 West 6th Street.
Second.
And do we have any other public comment on this item? Either on Zoom, you can use raise hand function, or chat.
If there is any member of the public who would like to comment on this item, please either raise your hand or leave a message in chat. I see none.
Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we have appeal notice of violation for 51369 for excessive growth at 4224 East Penn Court.
Thank you. Daniel Dixon again, City Legal Department. This is another appeal of a notice of violation. This one is for, again, a noxious plant, Chinese bush clover, or Sericea lespedeza, if I'm hopefully saying that correctly. This notice of violation was issued on June 16th. After a neighborhood compliance officer personally observed Chinese bush clover growing on this individual's property. This plant is not only on our local prohibited species list, it's actually also listed under state rules. It's the Indiana's terrestrial plant rule under Indiana Administrative Code. So in addition to our local code, it's also on the prohibited species list for the state. And so given all those things, I believe that the notice of violation was properly issued. This is a noxious plant or a weed growing in violation of code, and would ask that the notice of violation be upheld. Joe Stong is here as well to answer any questions that you have. And I'm not sure if our appellant's here or not.
We don't see Mr. Harper. Is Mr. Harper on the Zoom link for tonight's meeting? We don't think he's on the meeting.
Questions from the board on this item? We did ask a question. I don't know if you got any more information after the work session about the plant. He made a reference to edible plants in his front yard, and I wasn't sure if there's any reason to think that that's...
I'm Joe Stong. I work for the Hand Department. I looked up at least the Chinese bush clover. It's got a rating of like 1 out of 5 for edibility. Perhaps the other things in the yard, I mean, I didn't see anything else that resembled something like a garden that he was cultivating or trying to keep up for edibility.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any public comment on this item? On Zoom, you can use raised hand or chat functions. Seeing none. Is there a motion on this item?
I move that we uphold the notice of violation 51369 for excessive growth at 4224 East Penn Court.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have Title VI enforcement. Under Title VI enforcement, we have abatement at 2225 South High.
Mayor,
Okay, we've got Mr. Adam here. Mr. Adam will,
Yes, I
Ms. Dong will present, and then we'll open up comment to you. Hang on one second, please.
Thank you.
So on May 19th, May 31st, and June 9th, 2022, I issued tickets for overgrowth at the lot at 2225 South High Street. The violation has not been corrected and the period has lapsed, and so we are requesting a continuous abatement through May 19th, 2023, and permission to enter the property to abate it.
After the last meeting where this was tabled, city staff did go and view the site from the side path there on South High Street. The entire front portion of the yard, probably well over an acre, that heads down south to Morris Pike, is not being maintained in any way. We did speak with project representatives from the High Street and from the side path project there, in reference to Mr. Adams stating that there were some outstanding items with that project still lingering, like some concrete bags, disposed concrete, construction signage, et cetera. That was not on site when we visited, and the entire front area along High Street down to Morris Pike's not being maintained in any way, has not been mowed this year. We are requesting that the board approve the abatement at 2225 South High Street.
Thank you. And we do have the resident on the property on Zoom, and we could go ahead and take comments from them now.
Mr. Adam, now would be your time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and thank you. Once again, obviously, I would like to see someone observe the property before and after. I have numerous photos and numerous comments from my neighbors that it was properly maintained. The problem I have with this is I still have a trench dug in my front yard on the north side of which you would probably consider an acre, which is less than one. But I still have a trench there that's 2.5 feet deep, and it's problematic. On June 25th, the people that were maintaining your easement of the walking path were by, and I talked to them while I was getting mail, and I said, would you cut this? And they were like, no, there's no absolute way that we would cut this. I have a trench in my front yard. I have city signs on the south side in the larger acreage, which is probably 2 acres. I did not cause this problem. June 26th, I was served. My mail person who comes by, her husband, when I received the certified letter, her husband bush hogs, and it's unbush hoggable. It's going to have to be removed by some type of weed eating system. And obviously I want the trench graded. I want a water meter in. I want it filled in. I've waited a year for this. The last time the property was cut was March, as I aforementioned, March 26, 2021. On July 1st, the veteran individual came by in an attempt, a futile attempt I may add, to read the meter, and it's so overgrown where the water company came in and dug a trench under my awning, and it still hasn't been filled in. In my opinion, you've rendered 3 portions of my property unmowable. The rest is being mowed. And I would really request that someone come by and take a walk around with me. Incidentally, on the far south side where the county placed a bridge over Jackson Creek, I still have, 2 years running, I still have a board set on my property, advertising jobs and such. My point may be yours. I think if you walked through it with me, you would realize it's not maintainable in its current state. And I personally, I agree, it needs to be remediated. I'm not going to do it because you guys caused the issue. If there was possibly a way, I don't even have a water meter yet since like May of 2021. It's been very inconvenient for me, and I'm doing everything in my power to work with you guys and certainly avoid litigation. I mean, I was a very willing participant with the roundabout, incidentally, which I received more money for, than this walking path. The walking path has been very difficult. If you walked through the yard, you would find the bags of concrete. You would find this, but of course now I have, you know, I'm 5'11", I have substantially above waist-high grass, and a lot of it is tall fescue, if we're talking about species and not just species, and that's what you guys planted. I want it gone as badly as you do, and I hope we can do this without litigation. I'm certainly willing and amenable to help you guys out with this, but you guys are gonna have to come by when I'm here so I can show you some of this.
Thank you for your comments.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you for listening.
I would just add, again, this is Adam Wason, Public Works Director. You know, there are many, many areas of this yard that should have been maintained for some time now, and that is not the direct result of anything the city did. You know, in terms of CBU and a water meter and a trench, that's not what we observed. We did not observe anything that was 2 feet deep. I'm more than willing to meet Mr. Adam on site with Joe and hand staff, but at this time we would ask that the board do approve the abatement at 2225 South High, given the circumstances. And then if anything did come from a site visit, we would revisit that with the board at the next meeting.
Thank you. Do we have
I would really enjoy meeting with your representative too. So please contact me before you come out.
Yeah, and Mr. Adam, can we make sure we get updated contact information for you? For the phone numbers we were able to find, we were not able to get in touch with you either. So if you could direct.
Oh, well, I apologize for that.
If you could direct.
My phone number is 812-287-3703.
So again, the request from staff today is to uphold the abatement at 2225 South High Street. Staff will agree to call Mr. Adam, meet him on site, and see if there are additional items that would not require the abatement. But everything that we've seen, the abatement is necessary and should be upheld.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item? Do we have any other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? If you're on Zoom, you can use the raised hand function or chat function. Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
I move that we abate the property at 2225 South High Street and would encourage Mr. Adam and staff to work together soon to come up with a meeting on site to discuss this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we have approval of minutes for June 21st of 2022, Elders Journey Home Care Adopt a Median Partnership Agreement, Memorandum of Understanding between City of Bloomington Utilities and Public Works for Cost Sharing and Street Sweeping Study, Resolution 2022-44, New Mobile Vendor and Public Right-of-Way for Moon Pennies LLC, Shared Use E-Bike Agreement with Lime, Acceptance of public improvements associated with Mill Creek Phase 2, Section 1 subdivision, Resolution 2022-47, Monroe County History Center's 100 Years of Community, noise permit for Mother Hubbard's Garden Gala, and approval of payroll. Do we have any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, is there any public comment on anything within the consent agenda this evening? Again, if you're on Zoom, you can use raised hand or chat function. Seeing no comments, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda for tonight's meeting, July 5th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up is new business. First under new business is Resolution 2022-42, Meridian Fiber Project.
Hello, board members. I will be pulling up the presentation in just a moment.
And if you can just state your name for the record, that would be great.
Sure. My name is Rick Dietz. I'm the Director of Information and Technology Services for the City of Bloomington. Are you able to see the
Yes.
screen?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you for the opportunity to address you on an important project that we have been working on for quite some time. And we're happy to bring this to the Board of Public Works for your role in a part of this quite substantial effort and project. For quite some time, the City of Bloomington has sought to ensure that our Bloomington residents and businesses have ubiquitous and affordable high-speed fiber connectivity to secure the benefits of modern technology for all in our community, whether it be education, healthcare, jobs, entertainment, personal engagement in our community, and more. All of that's incredibly important, and it should be available regardless of income and geographic location. A major objective of the city throughout our efforts has been to do what we can to bridge the digital divide and address the digital equity gaps that we identified in our 2020 Digital Equity Survey and Strategic Plan, and overall to enhance Bloomington's competitiveness as a leading innovative community. This project has been in the works for some time, but began for this administration in 2016. We compiled, we assembled and released a request for information that we narrowed down from 21, 12, 6, 4, 2, and 1 potential partners. And that partner was Axia. We entered into negotiations with them, which later dissolved when they were purchased by a large firm, and they pivoted in their target markets. We also had conversations within and outside of our RFI process with a number of partners, including Carlisle, Umura, Allo, Ting, and Metronet. We found a potential partner in Metronet. They looked promising. and they merged with another company, which then changed their target markets as well. Throughout this process, we've engaged with our local incumbent providers, Smithville, AT&T, and Comcast, but we found they were not pursuing citywide fiber to the premise, or not aligned with our overall goals, be it in digital equity, commitments to full community coverage, fiber-based infrastructure, et cetera. Then with the advent of COVID-19, we, as well as nearly every community in the United States and beyond, recognized the importance and criticality of high-speed internet. In 2020, not intentionally timed with the COVID pandemic, but certainly informed by it, we released a digital equity survey and used the findings of that to develop our 2020 digital equity strategic plan, which has informed our efforts since then. Then, in the tail end of 2020, we began conversations with a company called Wired, which also was purchased by a large investment firm in this case, and they changed their market targets. But as a result of strong and long-standing professional relationships between leadership at Wired and Meridian, Wired agreed to share their information from their site visits, from their work with us to bootstrap our effort with Meridian. That resulted in the drafting and release of a letter of intent in August of 2021, and then the work from that time to date has been on a master agreement, which we have since signed, a joint digital equity initiative, the conduit asset inventory on the city's side, numerous site visits, hundreds of meetings to get to this point. We've been through a lot of conversations over the years with potential partners, and we found Meridian to be a vastly different potential partner from all of the others that we have engaged with to their benefit, which to their credit, which brings us to this discussion today. We are bringing forward to the Board of Public Works a request in the form of this resolution to approve access to rights of way under our master easement agreement, which is part of the master developer agreement, which we have agreed to with Meridian, and then also to agree to the use of roughly 17 miles of unused city conduit. This process and this request is part of the overall process that we have worked through with the RDC, the Plan Commission, the EDC, the City Council, and then just earlier today, final approval by the RDC of the TIF process, which provides tax increment finance business personal property tax benefits to Meridian. And this process, which we are engaged in today with the Board of Public Works, where the BDU Advisory Committee passed a resolution which is in your packet in support of the Board of Public Works approving these two items in the resolution. And I should say, after I conclude the presentation here, Beth, Kate, and others are available to expand on the language in the resolution and the legal agreement. Meridium is an international public infrastructure developer, investor, manager. They're based in France. Their U.S. headquarters is in New York City. They are a mission-driven firm. They are uniquely, in our experience engaging with internet providers, they are a benefit corporation under French law, which means that not only do they have a fiduciary responsibility to make wise investments that pay off for their investors, but they also commit to environmental, social, and corporate governance goals, as well as UN Sustainable Development Goals as part of their business DNA. They generally focus in transportation, energy transformation, and fiber optic infrastructure. And because of these things, in particular, the benefit corporation aspect, we find them to be a uniquely good fit with Bloomington's fiber goals, our digital equity strategic plan, and our community's values. The project Meridium has proposed is to build a gigabit speed fiber optic network in Bloomington. This is an open access network. Meridium is not itself an ISP. They are building the network. They will build and manage the network, and then open that up to an ISP partner, which will have time-limited access to the network. And after that time period, 5 to 7 years, the network will be open to other ISPs, including new market entrants as well as existing incumbent providers. Meridium's proposing to make a greater than $50 million investment in our community, including new jobs and Bloomington office for their efforts. They're proposing full community coverage. 85% is in the contractual language, but we fully anticipate this to be significantly higher. And one of the and we expect the cost of the ISP service to be competitive. It will need to be in our environment, and we have every expectation that will be the case. The project also protects network neutrality and the city's interests through a voice at the table if Meridium in the future chooses to transfer ownership of the network. The city has a voice in that. The project has a regional impact that extends beyond Bloomington. When we began this discussion with Meridium, we found out that we on the city side found out that their investment strategy requires a higher amount to invest than Bloomington would take on its own. We looked to some of our neighbors who have similar situations in their community, largely with stale broadband environments, and we brought them on board. Bloomington is the anchor city in this regional network, and as mentioned previously, the headquarters for the company that will operate this network on the ground will be based in Bloomington. The build will start this year and may include live customers by the end of the year with your support for this project, and is planned to conclude in 3 years or less. And then lastly, but certainly not least in my assessment, is a joint digital equity initiative that we have defined, which will provide income eligible households with 250 megabit per second up and down service with no connection fees to come onto the network. This will come at a cost of essentially $0 a month, with $30 a month for the ISP, which will be offset by $30 per month from the Biden-Harris Affordable Connectivity Program subsidy. essentially, again, meaning that the service will be free on a monthly basis. Meridian is also planning and proposed and committed in our contract to provide digital equity staffer on the ground who will be working to make sure that that our efforts to provide and expand and improve digital equity in our community are fully staffed and engaged. They are proposing they've committed to 85,000 annually commitment into our digital equity fund. The service will be available at all Bloomington Housing Authority apartment buildings, and eligibility for the digital equity program is quite broad. It includes federal and state programs. If households are eligible for those programs, be it SNAP, HUD housing vouchers, otherwise known as Section 8, Indiana TANF, free and reduced school meals, et cetera, eligibility for these programs grants you eligibility for the digital equity program. The digital equity program hits a number of our targets in the city's digital equity strategic plan, and we're very happy that this will make significant progress in our goals there. The overall city's contributions to this project include a $1 million pledge from the city to the Digital Equity Fund, which we will use largely to support connections to the network and other digital equity activities. The city will be an active partner in the success of the Digital Equity Initiative. The city has supported Meridian's request for $10.9 million in business personal property tax relief through the establishment of a tax increment finance district, which just passed the RDC, concluding that process. And then the city is also contributing unused and excess Bloomington Digital Underground conduit from our conduit and fiber network to this project. The overall project boundary is the city of Bloomington plus the areas identified for annexation in the 2017 process. Within the city's boundary, as pertains to the TIF district, as well as the use of the BDU conduit and the rights-of-way discussion, that rights-of-way resolution that you are entertaining, or here you'll see that there is both aerial and underground fiber proposed as part of this network, aerial in blue and underground in red. The footprint for the cities, the available city conduit for this is shown here, which is the subject of the conduit element of this resolution. In summary, this project will establish a community-wide gigabit fiber to the premise network operated as an open access network after a relatively short exclusivity period. It's built by a unique partner, Meridian. It's a benefit corporation committed to sustainability and equity. It features a groundbreaking digital equity program with 250 megabits up and down service, no startup fees, and essentially $0 a month, which we fully expect will have a real and measurable impact on the digital divide in our community. This project essentially has attracted and will establish a high-tech company based in Bloomington, making over $50 million in local investment in infrastructure, including the creation of an estimated 10 to 12 local jobs. The network will be operated by Hoosier Networks, LLC, to be headquartered in Bloomington to support the broader Indiana operations in Bloomington, Columbus, Shelbyville, and Martinsville, and potentially beyond that if Meridian invests in additional Indiana cities. There's no tax increase from using the TIF funding on Bloomington residents. And to date, the public review and approval by multiple boards and commissions includes the RDC, Plan Commission, EDC, City Council, and Bloomington Digital Underground Advisory Committee, and just earlier, the RDC again, concluding the TIF process. I'll share this quote with you from Blair Levin, who's the executive director of the Obama administration's 2010 National Broadband Plan, and a supporter and advisor to us throughout this process. He's as excited about this project as we are. And then in summary, the request for the Board of Public Works is to approve Resolution 2022-42, which includes support for rights-of-way, access, language in the master developer and master easement agreements, and also the use of this city's excess unused conduit to bootstrap the project with your approval. I want to thank you for considering the request, and then I want to open this up to Beth Kate to expand on the language in the resolutions and these aspects of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
I should also
Rick.
say that Scott Lehman is on the call from Meridian in case you have questions to direct directly to a Meridian representative. Thank you.
So Beth Kate, Corporation Counsel, Rick very thoroughly went through the contours of this arrangement. What you have before you is a resolution that reflects the fact that Meridian is a little different than other broadband providers in the area in that they typically provide the communication service as well. But as you heard Rick say, they are not an ISP. Meridian is not an ISP. And so under state code, they're not a utility that just goes into the right-of-way subject to what the code actually sets out as the terms. And so the master easement agreement portion of this is really intended to set up some overarching umbrella terms of access to the public right-of-way. And that would be subject, though, to the usual permitting process, all the usual standards, as you could see within the terms of the master development agreement and the master easement agreement that's appended to that. It makes plentiful reference to them operating in accordance with applicable law and ordinances, permit requirements, and so on. So what this is really doing is providing, if you will, the equivalent for them to get access to the right-of-way that others who'd be accessing the right-of-way are seeking. On the master license agreement side, that is an agreement that would allow them to access that 17 miles of unused city conduit, which is a city asset that Rick was describing earlier. And so that's what that agreement is outlining the terms of access to. And as he mentioned, the BDUAC has approved a resolution of support for access to the conduit in support of this overall project, the network build. And if there is an extension of the city conduit at a later date, they support us making future conduit available to Meridian in connection with the project as well. So what we're looking for you all to do is to consider the resolution that would approve the terms of the master easement agreement and the master license agreement as, again, kind of setting up, especially on the easement side, the umbrella. All of their build will still be subject to the normal permitting process. That's kind of in a nutshell what this is about and what stage we're at now. I am more than happy to answer questions. And by the way, let me apologize. Usually you would have a staff report kind of basically saying what I just said, but I have been out of town managing a family health matter the last few days and just did not get the time. So I knew that we would have the opportunity to answer your questions here, which I am happy to do. Scott Lehman, as Rick said, from Meridian is on the line. Rick and others are available to answer any questions you have.
Questions from the board on this item?
I'm curious about the decision that Meridian gets what's essentially exclusive use of the unused conduit, both for the use going in, and then they pretty much control the terms of whether or not somebody else gets to use it along with them in the future. Can you talk a little bit about that decision to give them that exclusivity?
Sure. Thanks for that question. It's not exactly like that. The master development agreement says that others can access the conduit as long as their access is not going to materially disrupt Meridian's operations in the city conduit, and then they would share costs of maintaining the conduit in which the system is located.
I think the way that I read it was that they had to be able to come to an agreement on cost sharing. And is there anything to prevent Meridian from just refusing to come to those terms?
I think, certainly from our conversations with them, basically the idea is they just want to make sure that they're splitting it 50-50 and evenly. So I don't anticipate anything untoward, and that is the expectation that we have as we go forward with the agreement, and I think it's their expectation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I would just add one point on that, is that throughout the footprint in the map that we showed, generally there are three parallel conduits. One of those is used by the city. It contains our fiber as well as the fiber that supports the school corporation and a number of others who use city fiber. Those excess two conduits are what we're talking about here. Meridian is essentially going to be, granted a right to use, one of those, parallel conduit. There will continue to be throughout most of the footprint, a third excess conduit. But I would say to date, only Meridian has expressed a serious interest as a telecom provider in using the city's conduit. So I don't feel that it's really an exclusive arrangement with them.
Yeah, there hasn't been a rush to use the city conduit, basically. This is the one entity that's been really interested. So, thanks.
A similar question, because I think for some reason from past agreements was under the impression that we did have other ISPs using that conduit. So currently we don't have any other ISPs operating on that city conduit?
That's correct. We have other entities, the school corporation, the public library, and Monroe County government who use excess fiber. So we have a bundle of 96 strands of fiber that runs through one of those conduits, and we've provided use of excess fiber strands to those business or those government and quasi-governmental entities. The conduit has not been utilized, by anyone, previously. Although I'd have to check, my records. I think something maybe like a decade ago, we provided access to Smithville to be able to not have to dig up, a roadway. So a small segment of our conduit for them, but I'm not even sure that, I don't even believe that they're continuing to use that. So there's no substantial use by a private provider of any of our assets right now.
And so if Smithville is still using that fiber, because that is who I was thinking of with Smithville, does that mean that they can continue that use without an issue?
Yeah, there's nothing in here that
Right,
will
so
affect
so
existing
Smithville's
use.
an interesting case because a number of years ago, they bought conduit that runs parallel to ours and was installed at the same time. So they do not have a need or a desire to utilize our conduit because they have parallel infrastructure.
Okay. Very good. Other questions?
Once Meridian builds out the network, are they involved in facilitating a relationship with an ISP to use the network? What's that step of the process?
So they have an ISP that they are partnering with as their primary ISP to start out with. And then as Rick mentioned, it will operate as an open access network after an initial period of exclusivity for that ISP. And then they will open it up for use by other ISPs. Is that answering your
That does. So
question?
if the first 5 or 7 years, whatever it is, Meridian has already partnered with an ISP.
Yes.
Okay.
They're
Thank
in,
you.
yeah. Mhm. Okay.
Regarding the digital equity program, how does this proposal differ from existing digital equity programs that our residents can access currently with other service providers?
I don't know if Rick wants to go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah.
the main elements are that, so other providers do utilize the American Connectivity program, but the bandwidth that they are providing is lower than what Meridian has proposed. One of the biggest gaps that we see, and this came out fairly powerfully in our surveys, is that income-eligible households simply do not know that these programs exist. You know, the providers don't, and somewhat understandably, don't market them. They don't make as much money off of these programs as they would their normal tiers, you know, of service. So one of the elements of the digital equity plan, the joint digital equity plan with the city that's really important is that Meridian has committed to there being a digital equity coordinator, a person who is responsible to market and facilitate connections and make sure that this program is fully utilized. Meridian's also pledging, you know, $85,000 to the city's digital equity fund, which we will then use for other elements of digital equity programming, you know, which, you know, may potentially include help with assistance with devices and training, familiarity and skills around using computers and internet technology.
Thank you. And this is going to show my ignorance about the connections of this particular infrastructure, but is this infrastructure and service limited to internet specifically, or does it translate in like a cable format or any other service formats that Meridian's ISP could get into the market on?
You know, the ISP could do any number of things. You know, I think the program here, the ISP model is to provide data and not terrestrial cable television. Is, you know, that adds a different kind of regulatory regime, you know, to this to consider. This is largely about, you know, data and internet. But I think one of the things that I see as you know, a recipient of cable franchise fees, you know, for the city is that, you know, that type of service continues to decline as people, you know, essentially cut the cord and utilize services like, you know, a Roku, Chrome, Apple TV, et cetera, to be able to access video programming as opposed to terrestrial cable services. Scott Lehman from Meridian may want to chime in, and expand on that, but I don't, there's been no discussions of a traditional type of cable service provided.
Do you want me to expand on that?
You're welcome to. If you could just state your name for the record.
Okay, Scott Lehman with Meridian. As we take a look at providing services in the market, obviously fiber-based broadband services come at much higher speed, which also enables much greater number of applications that can run on that network. If you've tried to work at home on a 25/3 connection, you'll know how difficult that is, particularly if you have other people in the house. So our focus is getting the highest speed broadband service on a fiber infrastructure into every home, or at least 85% of the homes in Bloomington as quickly as possible. That will allow the applications to run over the top. As we take a look at what those applications will include, we're going to evaluate what the different content options are and how to educate the market on how to best evaluate and select those content options. It will not be in the form of a traditional cable TV option, but that's something that's already available in the marketplace if that should be a particular subscriber's preference.
Thank you. One question that I asked during the work session, and this might be a good opportunity for Meridian to speak to this, is that, it had been reported from other sources, other ISPs, that there is already an existing approximately 98% coverage in our Bloomington specific community with broadband, maybe not at the speeds that we're talking about here, but broadband generally speaking. And my question during the work session was that whether Meridian was planning to target the 2% that is currently, for whatever reason, not represented, not serviced by an existing broadband provider. And, we talked about what the possible reasons might be, that may be the case. And I just wasn't sure if Meridian has considered that.
No, it's not something that we focused on. I would actually say that the coverage for the cable company is probably 98% plus, because that network was built out in the 1970s under particular regulatory guidelines. As we take a look at it, we're looking to provide the greatest benefit to the community as a whole, both low income, I should say both, but in low income communities, residential communities, and then also in the small business communities. Those people that are looking to try to find ways to hire remote employees or to make their services available on a wider footprint by high-speed broadband connectivity into their office places.
I would add to that, if existing incumbent providers would share the areas that they are not providing coverage, then we will take a serious look at that. To date, they've not been willing to share their footprints with us.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, I just have a couple more, and then I'll wrap it up. Are there examples of Meridian doing a project like this in a community maybe of a similar scale or a similar nature in some way? And were there any issues that arose, and what were the resolutions to those issues, if there were issues? And speaking specifically, so we can narrow the scope, on right-of-way issues and issues related to using the infrastructure that we're looking at tonight.
We should probably let Scott, I think, speak to those issues. The information that we have about their prior projects around the world has been very positive in terms of completion, in terms of commitment to the community. But in terms of whether there have been specific public right-of-way access issues, Scott, if you'd like to jump in and speak to that.
Sure. Again, Scott Lehman with Meridian. When you take a look at building, local fiber optic networks, it is an intensely local activity, which is governed by local permitting requirements, local soil content, local roads, and even the local community on how you're allowed to dig these up. So there's not really one rule book that we get to run with as we go across, our projects in Germany, Canada, and the US. What we have found, and I've been building fiber networks for more than 25 years, is working with the local community is the most important element of this, is strong partnership, meetings with the permitting authorities. That is going to be what will help drive success. When you talk about the access to the right-of-way, the one thing I can tell you that we do encounter in all markets is areas where it's congested, where there is no longer space between, say, a set of buildings and the public right-of-way. And at that point, we are then forced to adapt our network design, and we look at alternate forms of network construction or alternate forms of network routing. Perhaps we can't go down Main Street between 2nd and 3rd. We'll have to go further up to Cochrane Street, cut across and come back around. So we're constantly working with the local community to find out the best design specs as we uncover issues in each market.
Great, thank
We
you.
will be using, as Rick had mentioned, aerial and underground as a way to make sure that we truly optimize and have the least disruptive deployment in the city of Bloomington as possible.
And as I mentioned before, I'll just jump in to say the permitting process will operate as usual, and that means the city engineer will be evaluating, obviously, the locations. We'll be working with Meridian and their construction company and so on, so through the process that Scott was just talking about.
Great. All right. My only other lingering question that I said I'd specifically ask, there is a term, a legal term, quiet enjoyment. Could you
yes.
just expand on what that means for the purposes of the city and Public Works?
Sure. So in the master development agreement, there are obligations of the city that are set out, and there are obligations of Meridian that are set out. One of the city's obligations is to ensure that they have quiet enjoyment of the space that they are occupying in city conduit and the public right-of-way. And what that means in real estate law, basically, is that the city won't take actions to disrupt or disturb what they have been granted access to occupy, and that we will make sure that others don't do what they are not allowed to do to disturb that occupancy as well. That's what quiet enjoyment means.
Do existing providers have quiet enjoyment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Any public comment on this item?
If there's anybody in the Zoom meeting that would like to offer public comment, you can do so via the chat function or the raised hand function. I don't see any.
All right. Is there a motion on this item?
With thanks to all of you for the very thorough and helpful explanation of a very complicated but beneficial issue, I move that we approve Resolution 2022-42, the Meridian Fiber Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have contract with Constellation Stage and Screen for renovations to the John Waldron Arts Center.
Before we start, I just want to be transparent and say that I'm an employee of Constellation Stage and Screen. I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion. I'm going to step out of the chamber until you're done.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Holly Warren. I'm Assistant Director for the Arts for the City of Bloomington. I'm going to give you a little background on the history of the Waldron Arts Center while we're making this request for renovations at this point in time. So I think as many of you know, back in December of 2020, Ivy Tech released itself from its lease with the city to use the Waldron Arts Center. At that time, the city convened a task force to find out, to determine what the recommendations were going to be for next steps for using the Arts Center. Ultimately, the task force decided that the city should continue to use the Arts Center for the purpose of the arts and recommended a series of renovations, really just to make sure that the facility was habitable and usable. So that means we upgraded the HVAC system, we did some maintenance to the facade of the facility, we repaired windows, we updated the plumbing. Basically, now you can walk in there and enjoy a show. One of the other recommendations that the task force made was to put management into the hands of a third-party management company to take over daily operations of the facility. Based on an RFP process that we did, we negotiated a contract with the newly founded Constellation Stage and Screen to take over management of the facility starting last Friday, July 1st. As part of Constellation's management, they have proposed a series of renovations to the interior of the building just to make it more comfortable and enjoyable for anybody who goes into the space, either to see a performance or see visual arts. I'm going to just run through a quick list of what those significant renovations are. The first are a few structural renovations. I'm going to start on the ground floor in the Fire Bay Theater. So part of the Fire Bay Theater has a green room for actors to get ready that basically is unusable at this point. So Constellation is proposing to work with their construction company to create some new doors and remove and relocate a staircase in that ground level to make the green room usable again. And then moving up to the main level of the facility where the visual arts galleries are, they're proposing to cut into a wall to create a new box office and ticket booth. And they're also proposing to break down a wall that kind of now stands between the main entryway and what was historically the mayor's office at the facility, to open that up and create a concession area. So again, customers and theater goers can come in before a show and actually relax and enjoy themselves in the facility. And then moving up to the third floor, this is where the main auditorium is. They're proposing to take out all the existing seating. It's incredibly uncomfortable up there, and just put in new seating again so people can really enjoy their experiences when they go into Constellation. We have run all of these revision plans by the Office of the Mayor. They are in favor of them. I think we're all in agreement that overall these renovations are going to make the facility more accessible for a wider audience to come in and enjoy the facility. Constellation would like these renovations to start as soon as possible. It's a big project, and it's going to mean that the facility is going to need to be closed. And they would like to be able to open in early fall, just so the community can, again, enjoy a full suite of theatrical performances and visual arts. So we anticipate that the facility would reopen in October of 2022. I think that's all I've got. You all have the packet of proposed renovations. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from the board?
The images that you included, are those demonstrating what it could look like, or that is what it will look like?
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I apologize. I didn't go through the cosmetics. So they are also proposing a series of painting and kind of some like Art Deco motifs, and they're including some murals. At those point, those murals are more of a vision. Those are not the final designs. Structurally, those designs are final. The cosmetic ones are the ones that may change.
Any other questions? Any public comments on this item? All right. Seeing no public comments, is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the contract with Constellation Stage and Screen for renovations to the John Waldron Art Center.
And I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes with 2 and 1 recusal.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks. We'll pause for a second while we get our full board back. right, next up is approved contract with Hare Construction LLC for repair of unsafe structure at 410 South Highland Avenue.
Hello again, Daniel Dixon with the City Legal Department. We are here requesting a resolution to approve a contract to perform work under an existing unsafe order to repair at 410 South Highland. As you can see from the staff report accompanying this request, this property was originally deemed unsafe back in April of 2021. At that point, Hand issued an unsafe order to repair. That order became final 10 days after it was issued. It was not appealed by the property owner or otherwise, so it is now a final order that is in effect. The property owner did not comply with the order to repair, and the property still remains to this date in disrepair and is still an unsafe building. Pursuant to Indiana code, when a property owner fails to comply with an unsafe order, Hand, in our particular instance, is tasked with then going about performing that work. We sought from the Monroe County Circuit Court what's called an inspection warrant in order to have Hand staff be able to go onto the property to really identify all of the action items that needed to be accomplished to complete this process. It was determined at that point that the amount of work done would be in excess of $10,000. Under Indiana code, Hand is required to let that project to a public bid, which it did and completed in April of 2022. As a result of that public bid process, Hand received one responsive bid from Hare Construction to perform the work, and Hand staff, after reviewing that, found it to be a responsive and responsible bid and are seeking approval to award that contract to Hare Construction for this property. And Mike Arnold is here. He's been involved with this property as well as the next property, and if you have specific questions about that, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item? Any public comment on this item? And if you're on Zoom, you can use raised hand or chat. There might not be very many people on Zoom right now.
And I see nothing.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the contract with Hare Construction LLC for repair to the unsafe structure at 410 South Highland Avenue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next is approved contract with Hare Construction LLC for repair of unsafe structure at 708 South Adams Street.
All right, thank you. Again, Daniel Dixon, Legal Department. This is a very similar process to the last one. 708 South Adams, again, is an unsafe structure, was issued an order to repair and seal in September of 2021. That order was not appealed, and it has become a final order. The property owner has failed to complete the work. And as our understanding is, this is a vacant property. So at this point, again, it's up to Hand at this point to get the work done. We obtained another inspection warrant and again determined that the scope of work for this would be in excess of $10,000 and followed the public bidding process for this. Again, Hare Construction was the only bidder and they were determined to be responsive and responsible, and so we are seeking approval in this case to award this contract to Hare Construction. And again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item? Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the contract with Hare Construction LLC for repair of the unsafe structure at 708 South Adams Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have construction inspection contract with Rundell Ernstberger Associates, Inc. for the Hopewell Phase 1 East project.
I did such a great job on this first time. I'm gonna let Patrick take a chance at it.
Hi, Patrick Durgis with the engineering department. Sorry, my computer died, so I'll have to do this from a phone.
Oh, yes. Our extra long meeting zapped everyone's.
Well, the work session plus the RDC plus this, yes.
It's a lot of,
Finally took care of
a
it.
lot of scrolling, a lot of work.
So for this is for the Hopewell Phase 1 East project. This will be inspection services for the demolition and also the infrastructure. This includes 4 separate firms, REA being the prime. Shrewsbury is also there for the heavy civil side. And then we have Metric Environmental Services for environmental investigations throughout construction. And also during demolition to verify asbestos removal and dust control measures during the demolition. And then last is Patriot, which will be doing material testing on materials installed, so concrete or soil compaction testing. When we originally priced this, we used a pretty standard percentage, which is around 13 to 14% of construction cost. But this project has a lot of specialty items that proved that percentage was much higher than what we expected, and so this came in well within our budget and was approved at RDC just earlier today. The contract amount is for $1,174,740. And I probably should have touched on that this was put out as a competitive process with 5 submittals on it, and we scored them based upon their. We have a scoring chart that we use for it, and this group received the highest score, and then we proceeded to negotiate the contract from there. Available for any questions.
Questions from the board? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the construction inspection contract with Rundell Ernstberger Associates, Inc. for the Hopewell Phase 1 East project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next up is Addendum 2 to LPA Consulting Contract with VS Engineering for the First Street Reconstruction Project from Fairview Street to College Avenue.
Hi, Patrick Durgis, Engineering Department again. This is not something we typically bring, is a contract reduction. But the contract, as we went through the process for public meetings and such, some of the deliverables, timing-wise, did not work out for the consultant. And so we removed some of those items. One of the largest items being a 3D rendering concept of the site, which for the previous project we discussed, Hopewell Phase 1 East, was a huge benefit to the project and discussing items, but those are typically done in the initial phases. We had a lot of back and forth in the very beginning, and the rendering just wasn't available for us during the initial phase, and so we decided to remove that from the contract. The other significant savings is the underground utility investigations, so SUE is what we call it. We had in there a little bit over 60 grand, and the bids came in around 20. And so typically we just, during the contract phase, they go out and ask for prices, and then typically we end up using that firm, but the firm that provided the price through the consultant wasn't able to perform the task in the right amount of time. So we reached out to a few others, and that was almost a $40,000 savings on that. Then this also, just to clean it up, we also added additional services that we felt needed in this project. The big one being right-of-way services. Basically, we do an initial, it's called an APA, appraisal problem analysis. It determines the type of appraisal that we do, and then the appraisal prices are based upon an NDOT schedule after that. And so we guessed the first time of what it would be. Some of them came in higher, some of them came in less, and so this is cleaning that up. And then another part is pavement design. Typically on a large corridor reconstruction, you do look at a pavement design. That was not included, missed during the initial contract. That's, I believe, around 4,000 to 6,000. I'm not remembering the exact number right now. But typically with doing a pavement design, we'll have a better pavement section that typically means a thinner pavement section, which should be less cost. And then part of that pavement design will also compare the asphalt pavement because of current oil prices to a concrete design to see which was the most cost effective as we attempt to guess what's going to happen beginning of next year for bidding. And so that change reduces the contract by $59,265.40, bringing the new not to exceed amount to $669,763.63. I will note that there is an additional change. Well, it's not really a change order. It's a new contract for this project that will be coming at the next board, which is around, I think, around $35,000 for right-of-way services. NDOT requires that right-of-way services are contracted separately from design. And so we'll have a new contract that comes. So we'll be spending a little bit of this savings that you see right now at the next board meeting. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comment on this item?
No comment.
Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve Addendum 2 to LPA Consulting Contract with VS Engineering for the First Street Reconstruction Project from Fairview Street to College Avenue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next is request from Reed & Sons Construction for lane closures on West Fountain Drive, and this is July 11th, 2022 to July 23rd, 2022.
Good evening. Paul Kerber with Engineering. Reed & Sons Construction is completing a water main replacement for City of Bloomington Utilities. This will be on West Fountain Drive, west of North Adams Street. The work is planned for July 11th to July 23rd, 2022, and most of this work will be on the dead-end section of West Fountain Drive. And they've sent out notices to adjacent properties and their residents, and we've reviewed their maintenance and traffic plans. Are there any questions?
On this item? Any public comment on this item? Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the request from Reed & Sons Construction for lane closures on West Fountain Drive from July 11th, 2022 to July 23rd, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have request from F.A. Wilhelm Construction for sidewalk closures on South Strong Drive, and this is from July 1st, 2022 to May 1st of 2023.
Paul Kerberg with Engineering. Wilhelm Construction is completing a big construction project for Catalent. They're requesting a sidewalk closure along South Strong Drive. This is on the east side of the dead-end portion. And this sidewalk closure will facilitate the demolition and new construction. And we're going to ask them that they maintain pedestrian access as needed for their facilities. And I'll be sure to work with the contractor on that. And the sidewalk closure is planned from July 1st of 2022 to May 1st of 2023. Are there any questions?
Questions on this
No.
item? All right. Any public comment on this item?
I see none.
And I'm assuming on this item, if there are members of the public who are having concerns about this particular sidewalk or the pedestrian access, that there might be a contact person at Catalent that they could be guided to, and then they could also file a complaint with the Department of Public Works for further review.
Any issues, they can be addressed to either engineering or public works, and we can happily facilitate a response to those.
Great, thanks. All right. Do we have a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the request from F.A. Wilhelm Construction for sidewalk closures on South Strong Drive from July 1st, 2022 to May 1st, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have a request from Lineal Contracting for use of the right-of-way in the Stan's neighborhood and along South Rogers Street. And it does note that the work on South Rogers Street will take approximately 45 days, and the work in the Stan's will take approximately 90 days.
Paul Kerber with engineering. Lineal Contracting is doing work for AT&T to install fiber in a few neighborhoods on the south side of town. This is a request for temporary use of the right-of-way and also short-term lane closures with flaggers. These will mostly be on South Rogers Street, West Country Club, and South Rockport Road. The work in the Stands will mostly be, they'll just be using the parking lane. They won't have much impact to the traffic in that neighborhood. And yeah, the work in the Stands will be about 90 days, and then the work in the other areas will be about 45 days. Are there any questions?
Questions on this item?
No, I do have one question. So the 90 days in the Stands, I know that's, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic for schools on both ends of that subdivision, and this is going to go into that time period. Are there any special provisions for pedestrian traffic with the schools when they go back to school?
Just so they keep the sidewalks open. Most of their work, they should just be in the tree plot,
Okay,
and so they shouldn't affect the sidewalks.
all right, thanks.
Any other questions on this item?
I just have one. I'm just looking at the staff report, and it says that the work on Rogers will take approximately 70 days, and we're asking this, the agenda says 45. Is there a reason to make that longer than 45 days?
I think it's all of them together, add up to the 70 days. The Rogers Street, Country Club, and also the Rockport Road. I think they had 3 different applications.
Okay.
They're all included in this.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on this item? Is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the request from Lineal Contracting for use of the right-of-way in the Stands neighborhood and along South Rogers Street, knowing that the work on South Rogers Street will take approximately 45 days and the work in the Stands will take approximately 90 days.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have change order number 1 to contract with Strausser Construction for the remodel of Fire Station number 5.
We're almost done. This is Adam Wason on behalf of J.D. Borup, our Public Works Facilities Director. So this is a change order in the amount of $4,855 for some minor changes to the project at Fire Station number 5, contracted with Strausser Construction. These are all pretty minor requests. It was some additional masonry work, some additional electrical circuits, getting some higher efficiency appliances, repairing some damaged drywall, et cetera. So changes the not to exceed amount from $48,975 to $53,830. Request your approval and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comment on this item?
There is not any comment.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve change order number 1 to contract with Strausser Construction for the remodel of Fire Station number 5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have staff reports and other business.
I'll skip staff reports. in the, to get us out of here a little earlier than planned.
Lastly, we have approval of claims. Are there any questions on the claims? Any public comment on claims?
I
Dave,
see
any
none.
comments? No.
All right. Is there a motion on claims?
I move that we approve claims in the amount of $1,005,094.14.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And if there's nothing else, I will call for adjournment.